I have to deal with the edifice, the crumbling wreckage, the public relations dumpster fire, the emotional hot mess that is Harry and Meghan's marriage. This is beyond meltdown, folks. Now, don't forget, just a few days ago, Meghan posted her little reel of photographs, a little gallery, celebrating their wonderful summer, of course, including that notorious photograph of Archie and Lily literally running towards their late grandmother, Princess Diana's grave, which I think is dark, creepy, obnoxious, and wrong. So we had that photo drop, and in that photo was a photograph of Harry and Meghan looking blissfully, performatively happy. Now, Virginia Woolf is a famous author, an English author. She created the stream of consciousness literature style. And she said, a perfectly happy human being would be silent. We've had the opposite from Harry and Meghan. We've had endless propaganda about how in love they are, how attracted they are to each other, how bonded they are, how mutually inseparable they are. Well, good luck with that. Because not only have we had months and months and months of Harry and Meghan going solo, including Harry at one point driving for 2.5 hours from his Montecito apartment to LA for a trip to Nobu, which is a sushi restaurant, right? Something fishy is going on. Now, the big thing that I've learned with the Sussexes is that whatever the message is that they're sending out, the truth is always the opposite. So if they say we're happy, we're miserable. If they say we're miserable, they're happy. And it's just like a hall of mirrors because they live in their own world, in their own bubble, and Meghan has her truth, which is at odds with reality. So there are so many issues going on here. Apart from that photo drop with, we're so happy, my husband and I. And of course, Harry popping up on Meghan's Sky News Australia, not Sky News, the MasterChef. MasterChef Australia, which is a cookery show in the beautiful country of Australia where the Mark Dolan show has so many viewers. And she goes on there and she, by the way, talks about how when she was growing up, she loved fresh produce and it was all about good vegetables and great meat and locally sourced food. And yet, previously, she's been on the record as saying, including on her own TV show with Love Meghan, my husband, flour sprinkles, lavender towels go in the refrigerator. When she was on her own show, apparently she ate fast food and had these ready meals. So which is it, Meghan? Of course, you know, that's the duality of the Duchess, right? She lives in a kind of parallel existence. The real world and the truth, and then Meghan lacks. So we're being sent all this propaganda by the relentless and ruthless Sussex public relations machine that never sleeps, that the couple are very happy. Well, all of that has gone up in smoke. Many solo appearances, not just Harry's trip to the sushi bar on his own to meet his friends, no Meghan, and Harry turning up at this Time magazine athletics event all by himself in California. He was in New York on his own, in China on his own, in Ukraine on his own, previously in the UK on his own, going to the polo barefoot, watching someone else's kids play on his own. But it gets worse because now the mask is slipping. The couple can publish as many videos demonstrating how affectionate they are with each other and as many photographs, including a very strange Valentine's Day photograph, which features from Meghan, not just a picture of Harry, but Harry and the kids. Now, why are the children featuring in a Valentine's card? The Valentine is about your partner, right? We love our kids. I have two. And no problem. 364 days a year, they are my focus. But Valentine's Day, and that is the day for your spouse, isn't it? Your husband, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, or your wife. So why are Archie and Lily there? Well, because there's trouble in paradise. And Meghan cannot bear, in my opinion, to give Harry the spotlight and let him be the focus of her attention, even on Valentine's Day, which is about the couple. Now, I'm the only journalist in the world that made that observation because I've got what you could describe as a power brain, if that makes sense. Brains are all very good. They're excellent. They're kind of mushy. There's all the fat in there. You've got synapses and neurons. And they're not particularly good to look at, the brain, but it functions very well. And I have a kind of super brain, like a Tesla, really. 10 years from now, it's like a 2036 model Tesla in the brain. And I am the only journalist on the planet that noticed. And it's very significant, this, because you've always got to look at the clues with Harry and Meghan. I'm the only journalist in the world with my unique, mushy power brain Tesla 2036 model to notice that the kids were on a Valentine's Day card. Why is that? It's very strange. I was the only journalist in the world to observe that at the previous Invictus Games, in which it was in beautiful snowy Canada, Vancouver, Meghan left just a couple of days before Valentine's. So she skips the opportunity of spending Valentine's Day with Harry in a log cabin where they can enjoy the snowy aspect, maybe have cocktails in the log cabin, and beautiful roaring fire. And of course, on a family show, I'll go into no more detail than that. But Meghan doesn't want to do that. This is just business now. Meghan is interested in Harry's titles, the royal connections. That's why they've gone back to King Charles. They need money and they need status and they need pedigree. They need to be elevated. Diana, the late Diana, is being brought into the Sussex brand. I'm calling it Project Diana. We've seen that with the Highgrove House, Althorpe House, photo drop with Archie Lily, all of that stuff. But it gets worse. The British singer, Cindy Christmas, had a wild flirting session with Prince Harry whilst performing at the David Foster Foundation's glittering 40th anniversary gala on Friday. So the Duke and Duchess of Sussex attended the event to show support for long-standing friends David Foster and Catherine McPhee. A little bit embarrassing, therefore, that Meghan was completely blanked by David Foster when she reached out her hand at the photo call. We also had the usual creepy body language of Meghan telling people where to stand and how to pose for photographs and where. Total control freak. She did that, of course, to Dr. Sophie Chandalkar as well, who is the chairwoman of Sente Vale, a charity that Harry's now lost control over. So Harry and Meghan were at this event because they've got nothing else to do. They've got no jobs or anything. There's no money coming in, sadly. I say that with no pleasure at all. They are in big financial trouble. And that's one of the reasons why the marriage is crumbling. But wait till you hear this. Got this singer, right? I'm not very up to speed with the latest music. I only know about Elton John. But you've got this beautiful singer, and her name is Cindy Christmas. And she's a beautiful lady. In fact, if she was in your life, it would be Christmas every day. And who knows, because Harry looks a little bit like Santa Claus. He's like a ginger Father Christmas, isn't he? And for Cindy, standout experience of the evening was meeting Harry. She was totally taken with him. And the connection between the two of them was electric. There was chemistry there. Harry's eyes lit up. He looked like a kid in a candy store. And it's a huge deal because it absolutely demonstrates that Harry's not happy, that he hasn't got, in my opinion, that loving relationship, that emotional connection with Meghan that he did have with Cindy Christmas. And she digged Harry. I mean, let me know in the comments, right? Harry's 41 years of age. I still think he's pretty decent looking. Wouldn't you say? Is Harry good looking? I think he's in the ballpark of being an attractive man still. I think he's still got it. Meghan has as well, let's be fair, and she'll be deploying that when they divorce, and she'll be looking for Elon Musk. My husband, richest man in the world, you're welcome. Oh, Elon. I'm Elon Musk, and I've been married to Meghan for like half a day, and I'm already broke because she spends so much money. Cindy Christmas loved Harry. And if you look at the body language, Harry loved Cindy. She's got a song out called Lean on You. I know nothing about it. I'm assuming she's a wonderful songstress and that she can carry a tune. She posted about the exchange.
What happens when the image you've spent years building starts becoming harder and harder to maintain? Because right now, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are facing questions on several fronts at once. Harry is dealing with the fallout from a major legal defeat in London. Meghan is appearing on Australian television and pushing her lifestyle brand. The couple continue to showcase their family life. And yet, according to a number of royal commentators, the questions surrounding their finances, their public image, and even their marriage are getting louder. Now, before we go any further, let's make something very clear. There is no public confirmation that Harry and Meghan are separating, and we cannot know what happens privately inside their marriage. Likewise, claims about their personal finances should not be treated as established fact unless they're supported by reliable financial evidence. But the commentary surrounding the Sussexes is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore, because these aren't just questions about one photograph, or one court case, or one television appearance. They're all happening at roughly the same time. And when you put them together, you get a fascinating picture of a couple whose biggest challenge may no longer be escaping the royal family. It may be convincing the public that their new life is working exactly as planned. Let's start with Harry. Because while Meghan was appearing on MasterChef Australia, attention was simultaneously turning toward Harry's legal battle against associated newspapers. The case had already consumed years. According to the source material, the trial lasted 46 days and involved 97 allegations brought by Harry and other claimants. The judge ultimately rejected the claims being discussed in the commentary, and the issue then moved toward the question of costs, and that's where things became financially significant. One report cited in the source suggested that Associated Newspapers was seeking around $50 million in costs, while another discussion put Harry's potential exposure at a substantially lower capped figure. So which number is correct? That's precisely the point. The final amount was not simply a matter of somebody sending Harry a $50 million invoice. Costs hearings determine who pays what, and there were discussions of insurance, outside funding, and potential caps. In other words, the headline numbers being thrown around should be treated carefully. But even if Harry's personal liability is nowhere near the most dramatic figures being reported, there is still a significant financial issue here. A long-running legal battle has consequences. After the judgment, Harry and Baroness Doreen Lawrence publicly criticised the ruling. The statement described the decision as a complete and obvious whitewash, and according to the commentators, the timing of that statement was particularly controversial because the same judge was involved in determining the subsequent costs. One commentator argued that attacking the judgment so forcefully could potentially work against Harry when the court was considering litigation conduct. But importantly, that doesn't mean the judge automatically punished Harry because of the statement. The source itself acknowledges that whether the post-verdict comments would affect the costs decision was untested rather than certain. Still, the optics were undeniably dramatic. Harry had spent years fighting the British press. He had described himself as determined to challenge what he believed was wrongdoing. And now, the courtroom battle had ended with the Sussexes' legal strategy under intense scrutiny. And this is where the story gets even more interesting. The source material contains claims that Harry sought additional financial help from Elton John in connection with the legal costs. One commentator even joked that Elton effectively said he wasn't Harry's ATM. But here's something important. That claim is presented in the source as reporting and commentary. It is not independently established fact, and the same material raises another possibility, that insurance and external funding could absorb much of the eventual bill. So we shouldn't jump from "there are reports of a funding dispute" to "Harry cannot afford his legal bills." Those are two very different statements. But the fact that commentators are discussing Harry's financial exposure at all tells us something. The Sussexes' finances have become part of the public narrative. And that brings us to Meghan. While Harry was in court, Meghan was in the kitchen. The contrast couldn't have been more obvious. Harry, legal battles, judges, court costs, press disputes; Meghan, MasterChef Australia. And her appearance became another debate in its own right. Meghan spoke about food, family and cooking. She described cooking as a love language and talked about using food as a way of connecting with friends, family and her children. And immediately, the critics pounced. Some commentators found the presentation relatable. Others thought it sounded overly polished and rehearsed. One panellist described her style as constructed and manufactured. Again, that's commentary. But it raises an interesting question. Has Meghan's biggest challenge become authenticity? Because the entire Sussex brand increasingly revolves around lifestyle. Food, home, family, wellness, entertaining, gardening, products. And when your business depends on people believing that your lifestyle is aspirational and authentic, every contradiction becomes a potential problem. The love language debate. The phrase that particularly irritated the commentators was Meghan's description of cooking as a love language. Now, personally, there's nothing strange about that phrase. People have used food and cooking as expressions of affection for generations. But the commentary turned it into something much bigger. Why? Because Meghan's lifestyle brand depends heavily on emotional storytelling. Cooking isn't simply cooking. It's connection, it's family, it's love, it's memories, it's a way of life. That is the language of lifestyle marketing. And Meghan understands that world extremely well. The question is whether audiences believe it. And that's where the debate becomes less about food and more about branding. And just as Meghan's segment was unfolding, Harry appeared remotely. Meghan introduced him as her husband. He was reportedly participating while working with veterans. And suddenly, there was Harry, the royal husband, the familiar face, the connection to the monarchy. And according to one commentator, Meghan's appearance seemed to benefit from Harry's presence because his royal identity immediately became part of the segment. Again, that's an interpretation. But there is something interesting about the dynamic. Meghan has been building a lifestyle identity that is increasingly separate from royal life. Harry, meanwhile, remains inseparable from it. His titles, his family, his military history, his connection to Diana, his role in Invictus, his relationship with the King and Prince William. Everything about Harry carries royal context. So even when Meghan is trying to sell a lifestyle story, Harry can walk into the frame and suddenly the monarchy is back in the room. And here's something the critics couldn't dismiss. The MasterChef numbers. Whatever one thinks about Meghan's appearance, it attracted viewers. The source material reports that the episode saw a 16% increase in audience, reaching approximately 1.5 million viewers. That's worth acknowledging, because it complicates the idea that everything Meghan touches is automatically a failure. Love her or hate her, people watched. And that's the currency of television. Attention. So while critics may mock the appearance, from a purely audience perspective, it generated interest. And that matters, especially for someone trying to establish a lifestyle brand. Because Meghan's television appearance was happening against the backdrop of Harry's legal costs. And suddenly commentators started connecting the dots. One source argued that the couple already have substantial annual expenses associated with their California lifestyle, including their home, security, and other costs. Another commentator claimed the Sussexes are spending millions annually while their major entertainment income streams have slowed. But again, we need to separate reported facts from speculation. We don't know the Sussexes' current bank balance. We don't know their investment portfolio. We don't know their exact annual expenses. And we don't know exactly how much money their businesses generate. So saying they're broke would be irresponsible. But asking whether their current business model can sustain their lifestyle indefinitely? That's a legitimate question. This is where the discussion gets more sophisticated. You don't have to be broke to have a cash flow problem. A person can have millions in assets and still face enormous annual expenses. A luxury property costs money. Security costs money. Staff costs money. Travel costs money. Children's education costs money. Legal fees can be enormous. And if major new income isn't constantly replacing those expenses, wealth can gradually decline. That's the concern being raised by some of the commentators. Not necessarily Harry has no money, but how sustainable is the model? And that is a much more interesting question. Then there is another contradiction critics repeatedly bring up: the Sussexes' environmental messaging versus their use of private aviation. The private jet problem. Harry launched Travelist with an emphasis on making tourism more environmentally responsible. Yet the couple have continued to face criticism over private jet travel. The source material specifically discusses their use of private aviation and the hypocrisy accusations surrounding it. Again, supporters can argue that individual flights don't erase their broader environmental work. Critics can argue that public figures should practice what they preach. But this is exactly how the Sussex brand gets caught in a credibility trap. They aren't simply celebrities. They position themselves as advocates, and advocates are judged by a different standard. The Diana connection. And then we come to perhaps the most powerful asset Harry still possesses: his mother, Princess Diana. Meghan recently shared images connected to the family's time in Portugal and other family moments. And according to one commentator in the source material, there is speculation that the Sussexes could potentially pursue a future Netflix project connected to Diana's legacy. But once again, that's commentary, not confirmation of a planned project. Still, the idea itself reveals something. Diana remains commercially and emotionally powerful. The public knows Harry as Diana's son. That connection is permanent. And every time the Sussexes reference Diana, the royal story comes roaring back. This may actually be their biggest problem. Harry and Meghan wanted independence from the royal family, but their strongest commercial asset may still be their connection to it. Harry's title, his family, his mother, his childhood, his relationship with William, his relationship with Charles, the royal wedding, the royal exit, the Oprah interview, Spare, the Netflix documentary, even their criticism of the monarchy. All of it exists because Harry was born into the royal family. And that's the paradox. They can leave the institution, but they can't leave the story. Now aid the marriage speculation, and this is where the separate pieces begin to overlap. Because alongside the money and branding discussions, there has been growing commentary about Harry and Meghan appearing separately. Harry has attended events alone. He has spent time with friends alone. Meghan has pursued her own television and lifestyle appearances. Again, none of that proves marital problems, but commentators have interpreted the pattern as potentially significant. And then came the Cindy Christmas moment. Cindy Christmas enters the story. At a major event, Harry met singer Cindy Christmas. She appeared delighted to meet him. She later described the encounter warmly on social media. The commentator seized upon Harry's reaction and interpreted his body language as evidence that he was energized by the attention. Then came another detail. Meghan was not prominently featured in the post being discussed. And suddenly, the commentator transformed a celebrity interaction into a theory about the Sussex marriage. He argued that Cindy's enthusiasm could have been uncomfortable for Meghan. He went even further, suggesting that Meghan dislikes situations where Harry becomes the centre of attention. But again, those are the commentator's interpretations. They are not proof of jealousy. They are not proof of attraction. And they certainly aren't proof of an impending divorce. A celebrity meeting a prince and being excited about it is hardly unusual. But why does this speculation keep returning? Because Harry and Meghan have created one of the most intensely scrutinized marriages in the world. Their relationship isn't just a relationship, it's a public story. Their wedding was a global event. Their decision to leave royal duties was global news. Their interviews discussed their marriage. Their Netflix series discussed their relationship. Their memoir discussed their family. They've repeatedly invited audiences into their personal narrative. So now, every photograph is examined. Every solo appearance is analysed, every smile is dissected, every interaction becomes a clue. That's not necessarily fair, but it's reality. And then there's the family rift. The financial story also intersects with Harry's relationship with the royal family. The source material raises the question of Harry's relationship with his brother William, and, more specifically, whether Harry will ever have a meaningful relationship with Prince George and the younger Wales children. This is particularly significant because George is now a teenager. As he grows older, he will eventually encounter the public record surrounding his family. Harry's memoir, the interviews, the documentaries, the allegations, the controversies, and commentators have questioned whether that could affect future relationships between the cousins and their uncle. Again, we cannot know what George will think. He's a child, and his future relationship with his uncle belongs to him and his family. But the larger point is important. Harry's decisions don't only affect Harry, they affect generations of the family. The Sussex brand has a big decision to make, and perhaps this is where everything comes together. Harry and Meghan have several possible directions. They can continue talking about the royal family, they can focus on lifestyle, they can pursue entertainment, they can build their philanthropic work, they can appear separately, they can appear together, they can try to become a more conventional celebrity couple, or they can continue using their royal history as the foundation of everything they do. But each choice comes with a price. The more they rely on royal controversy, the harder it becomes to escape the royal story. The more they distance themselves from it, the more they risk losing the very thing that initially made their brand globally fascinating. That's the Sussex paradox. And Meghan's MasterChef appearance may have revealed more than expected, because look at what happened. Meghan appeared without needing to talk about the royal family. She talked about food, family, cooking, connection, her lifestyle, and for a moment she was simply Meghan. Then Harry appeared, and suddenly the prince was back. That's the power of the Sussex brand. The royal connection is never very far away. Whether that's a blessing or a curse depends entirely on what they want their future to look like. So, are they really in financial trouble? We don't know. Are they spending heavily? Almost certainly. They live an expensive lifestyle. Are they facing potentially significant legal costs? Yes, that's a legitimate issue raised by the court proceedings and cost discussions. Are reports claiming they are completely out of money proven? No. Are commentators speculating about financial pressure? Absolutely. And that's the distinction viewers need to understand. The most dramatic claims make the best headlines. But the truth is usually more complicated. Harry and Meghan could have substantial assets and still feel pressure from large expenses. They could also secure new deals tomorrow. One successful production could change the conversation entirely. One major partnership, one hit series, one successful business, that's Hollywood. And what about the marriage? Same answer, we don't know. There is no confirmed evidence from the material that Harry and Meghan are separating. Their solo appearances prove only that they sometimes work separately. Harry's interaction with Cindy proves that a singer was excited to meet him. Meghan's television appearance proves that she is continuing to pursue a public lifestyle brand. None of those things proves a marriage is collapsing. But the fact that these stories are being discussed together tells us something about the Sussexes' current public image. People are questioning the picture. And once that happens, every new image becomes another piece of evidence in the public imagination. The bigger crisis isn't money. It may be credibility. Can Harry and Meghan convince audiences that their brand is still relevant? Can Meghan turn lifestyle content into a sustainable business? Can Harry build a future beyond royal family disputes? Can they maintain their expensive lifestyle without relying indefinitely on the old royal narrative? Can they repair relationships with the family? And can they do all of that while protecting their children from the endless scrutiny they've spent years criticizing? Those are much bigger questions than, did Harry look at another woman? Or, can Harry pay one legal bill? The real story is the sustainability of the entire Sussex experiment. The final twist. Because perhaps Harry and Meghan aren't failing at all. Perhaps this is simply the messy middle of reinvention. They left the royal family. They moved to America. They built businesses. They made mistakes. They won some battles. They lost others. They became two of the most recognizable people on earth. And now, they're trying to figure out what comes next. That's not necessarily a crisis. That's life. But because they're Harry and Meghan, every decision becomes a global event, and every stumble becomes a headline. So here's the question. Are Harry and Meghan genuinely facing a financial crisis? Or are commentators exaggerating ordinary business and legal pressures because the Sussex story generates enormous attention? Is Meghan's lifestyle brand actually gaining momentum? The MasterChef Australia numbers suggest her appearance attracted a significant audience. Is Harry's legal battle going to leave him personally responsible for millions? We still need to wait for the final cost determination and distinguish between reported headline figures, caps, insurance, and outside funding. And what about the marriage? There is no confirmed evidence of a breakup. But the speculation clearly isn't going away. Because Harry and Meghan have spent years telling the world their story. And now, the world is telling its own version back. Maybe the Sussexes are stronger than ever. Maybe they're simply evolving. Maybe their business model needs another reinvention. Or maybe the critics are right that the royal connection remains the one thing holding the entire brand together. We will have to wait and see. But one thing is certain, the next chapter of the Sussex story could be less about leaving the royal family, and more about proving they can succeed without constantly needing the royal family to remain part of the conversation. And that may be the hardest challenge they've faced yet. What do you think? Are Harry and Meghan facing genuine financial pressure, or is this being exaggerated by their critics? Did Meghan's MasterChef Australia appearance help rebuild her image? And when it comes to the marriage speculation, are people reading far too much into Harry and Meghan's separate appearances and celebrity interactions? Drop your thoughts below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, subscribe, because the Sussex story is clearly nowhere near finished. I'll see you in the next one.